can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Katrina German of ethicaldigital.ca. And Katrina, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. There was a really interesting one. One of my favorite ones was the Dee Clevitt, actually. She has an agency that is an easy button for SOPs for companies out of all niches. So if someone wants to smooth out their client onboarding, staff onboarding, or just operational procedures in general, they call her, and she's a done-for-you service for that. And we geeked out on our favorite productivity tools and other things that makes us more efficient, because that's what she likes to talk about and do. That was a really interesting one. Also, Kevin Herrigan of Spinutech has an agency since 1995, and he talked about just the landscape. We're going to talk about internet today and obviously ethical things, or maybe things you should watch out for doing. But he's seen a lot of things since that time, from the internet through business, through agency life. And that was an interesting one as well. And Arit Oz has also run an agency for 25 years in the B2B space and helps companies more with global expansion and consistent branding. So check those out and more on inspiredinsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And the most important thing is the strategy. And we do the accountability and the full execution. So we, Katrina, are kind of like the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content and run their business and develop amazing relationships. So for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you definitely should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm introducing today Katrina German. She specializes in communications, technology, and digital strategy. She's the CEO and founder of Ethical Digital. You can find them at ethicaldigital.ca. And she and her team are changing the internet through the digital strategy, the research, and even certification, which we'll talk about. And Katrina has been included in Future for Good, Social Good Founders to Watch. She's won the YWCA Women of Distinction Award for Entrepreneurship, Startup Canada Prairie Award for Innovation, and several more. And I'm excited to talk about Ethical Digital and their ethical certification for marketers. And Katrina, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Just start off and tell people about Ethical Digital and what you do.
Well, as you mentioned, at Ethical Digital, we have the goal of changing the trajectory of the internet. So just a nice little small goal. We're the believers that we're the pioneers. We're the very first generation who is really creating this foundational space that will be influencing generations to come. And so what can we be doing to really approach this and be thinking about it consciously about how we can be making this a good space for ourselves and for our future humans? And so we do, the core of our business, the bread and butter, is our digital marketing services. So we make sure that what we're creating is inclusive in nature and really about connecting people and starting conversations as well as conversions for sure. But we also have taken it a little bit further where we work with universities to research this space and, the effects of social media on well-being, and not just that, but the overall technology space. So we've also researched how to get more women into venture capital, which which funds the internet. And women-led businesses have only received about 2% of the billions of dollars that have gone into the internet. So perhaps if we can influence the groups that are changing the internet or funding the internet, that perhaps we can see some differences in the types of projects being created there. We also do a lot of work in getting more Indigenous women involved in technology. They're very underrepresented in this space, and we're strong believers that, again, if the internet's the future, we should have a lot of different voices creating that future and ensuring that different people's needs are being met. And so from there, we take that research, we turn it into corporate training. And so we've got several different corporate trainings that we offer that have been getting really great responses. And we've just launched our certification for other marketing companies. So as I was mentioning to you earlier, basically, I kind of thought because we were a marketing firm, we might have some difficulties with people coming to us and saying, hey, we don't want to, do we want to get involved in this mission? But it was opposite. People did not see the competition. A lot of marketers are right on the front line. They're seeing some of these issues, and they were coming to us saying, hey, I want to do this better. And so we've started to put this together where basically we're putting together resources for other marketers. And it's a free membership at this point where basically you can come in, you can find some technology tools that can help you, create ethical content. You can find some regulatory information. You can just basically join a community who's really thinking about these things consciously and wanting to do their work a little bit better.
What made you decide to start this certification?
Well, it's an important thing. We really want to have people thinking about this and putting it out there in a way that they're actually saying and indicating to people, I'm thinking about your health when I'm creating content, and really kind of elevating the entire experience of being a digital marketer. I was quite concerned, back in the day, I was just, doing, all sorts of marketing type pieces. I have also had a technology company for a period. And basically, I was looking around, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. Trump was at his peak. There was a lot of mask versus anti-mask conversations going on. The algorithms on social media were really, really favoring intense conversations. And so I was just looking around on the conversations that were happening in my streams, and I thought, this cannot be healthy for people. This is actually making me feel sick being on some of these conversations and seeing some of these things that are happening here. So I kind of got concerned that we might be, the next tobacco company by being, digital marketing, where we actually harming people with the content we were creating. So I joined up with a university, and we gathered all of the academic research we could find from around the world around how social media was affecting well-being. And spoiler alert, there's absolutely a correlation with high social media use and anxiety, depression, self-esteem issues, sleep issues, a lot of different things. So I started thinking, well, how can we do this better? And actually, there's some fairly simple solutions that we can be doing as marketers and digital marketers and people consuming that content that can really make our experience in the space a lot better going forward.
So what are some of those things?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things we found out is really around the idea of FOMO. So the fear of missing out. And so this is a whole, it's actually a really new area. It's really come out in the last couple of years. This term was coined, but it's been a really effective marketing technique too. So basically, when you see it, you'll get an ad or a post that says get in now, you're going to be left out if you're not part of this group. You're, that kind of a real urgency. And it's not an artificial urgency. So it's an effective tool, as it really does work for getting people to take that action. However, we learned through our research that it actually has some really negative implications for people who are suffering from anxiety. And we know that the number of people suffering from anxiety is much higher than even pre-pandemic times. And so we want to be thinking about how can we create equally good content without sort of putting this artificial pressure on people who don't need extra pressure. And so really the idea, social media is, to your point in the intro, we all just want to connect. We all want to elevate each other. We really want to feel connected to a community. So when that's happening, people can have a really healthy experience with social media. But when it's not, it can really sort of take them down and make things worse. And so as marketers, when we're creating content for our own company or for other companies, we want to be thinking about, okay, can we create an equally effective message without putting in those artificial time pressures? So join us. There are still 5 spots left, things like that, that where it's sort of like we're doing this together. Come be a part of us kind of messaging rather than get in or you're out kind of messaging. So really subtle just changes to the language can have a huge impact on people's experience with the content that you're creating.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying there. You can spin it in like a FOMO way or spin it in a positive way. Like one way would be there's only 5 spots you're going to miss out, or join us. There's still 5 spots left. It's still creating a scarcity, but it's just a little different tone to it.
Exactly. And exactly. It's sort of like, hey, come be a part of us rather than you're in or you're out.
Love it. What
Yeah.
are some other mistakes you see people making with
Well,
their content and marketing?
yeah. So one of the things that's been really interesting is how the internet and social media usage has really affected people's sleep. And there's a lot of research in this space, and it's really conclusive. So it's not just the blue light information that you hear about how the light from our devices is changing our circadian rhythms, which causes us to kind of mess up our overall general natural sleep patterns. It's also even further. There's, especially for our young people, particularly, a lot of conversations start to spark up later in the evening at night and things like that. So again, as marketers, we want to be connecting with people that are, interested in when they're peak time, when they're, paying attention to the internet. But the important thing is we want to make sure we're not making any major announcements. We're not doing something important that people might be missing out during times when it might be affecting people's sleep. So being conscious of where your audiences are. I know a lot of people have global audiences. It can be tricky to pick those timelines, but being really conscious about, okay, a majority of our audience is in North America. Let's try to pick a time in the day that they're going to be online, but it's not going to be at a time that's going to be affecting their sleep. Because as we know, sleep affects everything. And, and we've all been in the social media rabbit hole where you're like, ooh, I'm just going to check something really quick. And then 2 hours later, you're like, wow, it's, 2 a.m. and I have to get up in the morning.
You mean
So
last night? Yeah.
and so we know this affects us as humans, and we know that it's very tempting. It's entirely set up to make us, want to consume more and more content. But how can we do that in a way that we're putting out good content where people are like, thank you, they feel connected, but we're not actually, contributing to some of these overall health issues that people are experiencing because of the internet?
I want to hear a little bit about your evolution as an agency. And when you first started, what were the services you were offering versus now? Because I know we were talking about you help a lot of associations, you do corporate training. What were the services when you first started? What did that look like?
Yeah, this honestly, I never intended to start an agency at all. I had a technology company where we were working with, we were actually doing video platforms. And this is before Facebook Live, even, when all the authentic video has really permeated the internet now. But this was just before that movement.
This
And
is
basically,
OneStory. Is
it was called
that
OneStory.
OneStory? Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And so we created that platform where basically it was a way for communications people to crowdsource video essentially and get people's opinions about things from anywhere. And so we worked with a lot of change organizations, some of the best communications people in the world, like United Nations Women. We got, men standing up for women's rights in Albania using our platform. So it was a really incredible experience. But I was in an area where there wasn't a lot of support for tech founders. And so I did a lot of traveling to connect to different markets and understand how to build things. I learned my marketing skills from some of the best in the world, which are technology founders, and some of the other communications people for these large groups. So when that company unfortunately didn't make it, but it was an excellent experience, still advise women, start a tech company. We need you. But basically, I started I worked with a local government agency to get other technology companies to commercialization. So I worked with about 70 different groups and got them to the point where they could sell their tech product. And the biggest thing I noticed is that people had a really cool idea, but they weren't sure how to find their market, like where people were, or they maybe had the wrong idea about which market wanted them and didn't really know how to test and find, the best place in an inexpensive way that people might be wanting to pick them up. So I actually wrote a book called Action Tracking, Master Digital Marketing in under 30 Days. And I really just intended it to be a resource for people because, kind of compilation of some of the things that I'd learned for some of these technology companies. But what I ended up finding was that I got swamped with requests of people who wanted to work and have me implement some of the systems. So over COVID, actually, I started the agency just before COVID started, and I had 4 people. We were ramping up. We had a great list of clients and who we were working with and who were coming in. And then within that first month, we lost half of our clients. Our leads list dried right up. It was crickets. And this was a new business. I wasn't sure that I wanted to weather the storm in, as an entrepreneur, or if I wanted to go find somewhere safe and go and work for somebody else for a period of time. So I laid off most of my staff. I had 2 of us that were just kind of wrapping things up, and then things got busy. We went from 2 people to 18 people over COVID as everybody realized they need to be online. So it was a very intense growth period, and it was very exciting. But as I mentioned, I started watching what was happening online over COVID, and I was just like, oh no, like, am I contributing to something that is going to be harmful for people? I'm a social impact entrepreneur overall, and I just was like, I was concerned. And so we started doing these studies. And honestly, it took a bit of courage for me it took a bit of time for me to get to the position where I was willing to put myself out there as a social impact entrepreneur, that we were going to be working on these things that made people's lives better. I was worried that we were going to lose, our base of marketing people we were going to work with, potential leads, all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I learned, though, was that actually people started coming to us that we really wanted to be working with too, because our brand really, like attracted like. So it took some courage to change the name to Ethical Digital, to move into this space and really start leaning into some of our beliefs. And like I said, the biggest surprise that I've found coming out of this is how many other people that are seeing the internet in the same way we are, as I'm putting it out there publicly, and wanting to join and be a part of the community who's coming up with solutions going forward.
It's really interesting, Katrina. Thanks for sharing that. Sometimes we have our biggest learnings and breakthroughs from things that don't work.
Yeah.
And what do you think it was about OneStory what was learning from there? Were you too early? Like, what do you think it was that didn't work?
Yeah, I do think you're right. It was a timing thing. A lot of our work at that point was convincing people that authentic video, just talking heads, would capture people's attentions. And it was just an early time in technology. They say, it's risky, right? A lot of startups fail, and but you pour your heart and soul into it, and most of the research out there about why some tech startups succeed and others don't, it basically boils down to timing. There's a great TED talk. I can't remember the author of it, but it's really about timing. And I'm like, how am I supposed to plan for that? But in the meantime, even though it didn't work out, I really strongly encourage other people, if you see an issue that's happening over and over, that is not only something you need to solve for yourself, but you see other people in your industry who probably could benefit from that solution, create a technology product. See if you can get it out there. It's a great new product stream, but we need a lot of different voices, creating that future of the internet. And so this is sort of a call for underrepresented groups to start thinking about, how can I solve this problem? Or, geez, there's no software that exists to do this. And I do this every day, and I really need to fix this. Technology is the perfect way to do that. And so I really look at technology as a way to solve problems. And so, we want to be conscious about what we're creating. But in the meantime, it's a really important thing that we can do to diversify your business, and also just, include more solutions online that can help people who are just like you.
What did you learn from OneStory that you now took into the next company? Maybe it's something you did the same, maybe it's
Yeah.
something you did differently.
I think the biggest thing is, building partnerships, I think, is probably one of the largest things. In both companies, we never would have gotten to the heights that we did achieve. Even for me right now, I work in a small city in the middle of Canada, and I'm able to work with people around the world who are very big names, because other people are doing introductions. They believe in what you're doing. So a little bit of start with why. People need to understand your intentions and what you're trying to accomplish. And if they buy in, they're going to do what they can to help you, elevate that idea. And so we get a ton of our business and just our, just general media and different pieces around that because, to your point at the beginning, dealing, equitably and having really strong partnerships with people and just, really trying to lift others, constantly as part of our corporate culture is probably one of the best things that you can do for any business.
Talk about the decision to become a B Corp, right?
Yeah,
It's maybe you could talk about some of the criteria, but it's extensive to do
it is.
that. And when you're busy, you're starting a business, why?
So,
And it's probably
yeah.
time consuming. It costs a lot of money.
It was, yeah, it costs money.
What's the criteria? And then talk about why.
Yeah. So basically, the idea behind B Corp is that you're not just, it's not just a business that's there just for profit. You're also thinking about people and planet. And so it's a certification in Canada, but it's also in the States as well. And I think around the world, that it took us actually a year to be certified. And there was an expense and it was time consuming to do. And to be honest, at
And
first,
you have to keep it up.
yeah,
It's not like you do it once and you're like,
yeah,
oh, we're good to go for the rest of our lives. Like you have to
yeah.
keep up with that.
Yes. And I'm a strong believer that business, it doesn't have to be just profit. I believe you can do good in the world and use business as your vehicle. It should be and profit. And so, we're demonstrating that right now that you can have a good business and do good in the world at the same time. And so this was sort of an indicator of our intention. And we wanted to work with some of the larger corporations who also value a B Corp status. So there was some economic reasons to do it as well. And I'll tell you, it's actually brought us some really great advantages over time. So not only does it signal our intention that we're here to do good in the world as well, for our employee retention, like, man, I get people weekly coming to wants to work for us. It also is really great for, signaling to our partners and people who want to work with us. It actually, for those big organizations, even if they're maybe not there completely on the social good side, they still need to check some boxes around TSG and making sure that they're, being more diverse. So we wanted to give ourselves a competitive advantage as well. But ultimately, it's really come with some interesting things. So we actually just are an agency who just received access to Google 360, which is the highest level of ads that you can be offering. There is sort of the best software, I believe, in the world for doing ads. So if you're doing ads anyway, you might as well use something that's going to get you the best return you possibly can. And this is a very expensive software. It's not something that we could achieve. Like, it's almost $500,000 just for the license, never mind any ad spend on top of that. This is not something that we could achieve as our small business and as a startup. And so because we're a B Corp, we're doing good in the world, though, we were able to get access to that. And so now that gives us, Google gets a market channel partner. We get, our businesses that we work with and the people we work with get the very best ads they possibly can in the world. And then us as an agency get to get the word out there even further. So so those are just some of the tangible things that have come through with being a part of that community. And so, yeah, so it was really important for us to signal, hey, we're not just here, we're here for the cash. Like, we're building a business here. We're building and we're building something big, but we're also, as we're doing it, we're building right in to everything that we're doing. We want to make sure that things are good for humans and good for the planet.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work. I looked in and someone was talking about it. And I looked into some of the criteria. I'm like, it's not just a one-time
No.
thing. It's like, whoa, it's a lot. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for going through it, and hopefully you get a lot of benefits out of it, not just that, but through partnerships or people like really understanding your values, and then other benefits just from doing that. So let's talk about, one of the things that you help with is corporate training.
Yes.
And what are the fan favorite popular topics that you have on the corporate training side?
So, of course, we do custom trainings like a lot of people do. So, I actually just did AI in business for Chamber of Commerce group. We had 250 people in that room, which was fantastic. I'm actually doing a keynote about my career and how social media affects mental health. We have 1,800 people signed up for that on Monday, which is really exciting. And so, there's a lot of kind of neat things that we can do custom wise, but really the ones that are taking off are really I think are interesting. So we have one just basically around digital literacy. So just understanding how the internet works, how that affects you as a person, and how it affects potentially mental health. We've also got ones that are just on productivity as well. So on sleep, how we're actually communicating with each other. But the biggest one that's been quite interesting that has really taken off is around hybrid workplaces. I actually don't even know if it's on here because I'm on the website, but
Yeah, by the
you're
way, if you're
shaming me
listening to
into
the
getting it on
audio,
there. Yeah. So
if you're
I'm
listening to the audio, there is a video component, so you can check this out. We have been sharing some of the ethicaldigital.ca, and you can
yeah.
see we're on the ethicaldigital.ca, and then they have a training page, so you can check it out if you want to here. But you can see some of the topics
Yeah.
on
So
that.
my apologies for breaking the fourth wall for those who are just listening rather than watching the
That's
video.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the one is around the hybrid workplace. So again, a lot of the research that we did around our social media and how we're communicating with each other is very applicable to all of these groups who really moved a major part of their communication to Teams and Slack. And so very similar things of just understanding how to develop an internal culture when most of your communication is being done online. So small things, right? Like don't use all caps when you're when you're typing. Emojis actually mean very different things to very different generations. Even other things like for me, for example, when I'm writing a text, I'll often, put a period at the end. When my son gets that, who's 18, he's like, "Mom, are you mad at me?" Because I'm like, "No, I'm just using good punctuation." It's a very different, these very subtle things in the intergenerational workforce. In some people being, speaking and actually being in the room while others are zooming in. There's a lot of pieces around those communications pieces that can really just need to be talked about, need to be nuanced. Really, the idea of establishing a culture where you assume good intent from the person who's sending information, even if it may come across a bit sharp or something through that communication. How can you then follow up to make sure there's no emotions behind it? Things like that. So it's really had a very strong uptake, and I was presenting for a large insurance group, and it was the second day of their team meetings. I was the very last presentation between 3 and 5. I was between all the people and dinner and the bar. And I thought, oh, they're going to want me out of here quick. Opposite, they actually kept me half an hour late because they just had so many questions. And that felt really good because that there's a really strong interest for people, for themselves as humans, to understand and help work in their families and for themselves personally, but also how you can be developing a culture where, you're still communicating online, but you're doing it in a way that everybody feels connected and lifted by that type of work. So yeah, so it's kind of a strange niche, but honestly, it's been really powerful and actually had some significant changes for those organizations. So exciting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think a lot of things can be misinterpreted via sometimes text-based
Mhm.
communication. And I have found
Absolutely.
that as well. And like if it was just we had a simple conversation, it would have been avoided. So totally agree on that. I've experienced that before many times. So sometimes it just makes sense to pick up the phone. But I would love to talk about the hiring side, right? Obviously you grew a team with OneStory and now with Ethical Digital, and you grew fast from 2 to 18. Talk about what's worked for you in the hiring process.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've actually even since reduced the team a little bit to just be more manageable. But the Hiring process is interesting. Again, it's been helpful for us to really kind of lead with our values and really look for people who are inspired by that, which also tends to bring us a lot of younger people. They're very aware of cause-based type things, and so that's been kind of a nice option that's really come out of these pieces. But I think it's that old adage of hire slow, fire fast, and I have to admit I'm not always the best at kind of seeing an issue in time. Sometimes it takes me a couple of months to to learn a lesson. But it is one of those things where once you have a really strong team, there's just nothing more powerful. And right now, my team is so tight. It's just wonderful. Even though we're all virtual, like we have a completely virtual office. I have people across Canada, but yet, a lot of people are doing tasks for others before they even get a chance to. It's really kind of moves like a really nice machine, really strong communication between everybody. Not to say there's not issues, it's a bunch of people working together. There's always going to be something, but once you have that team kind of melded together, and it's sort of, in our case, again, values based, everybody believes in what we're doing. And we have a fairly high level of transparency too, in terms of I share probably a lot more than a lot of other business owners do in terms of like, here's where we're at. But we're also, we're a startup. I just want people to understand how every action that we take actually impacts the overall success of the business. So if we have a client who's unhappy, that's a problem. If that kind of stuff. And now everybody understands those values, and we do everything we can to ensure that that's not going to be the case going forward. And it's really become a really strong, cohesive group. And I feel quite lucky to have the people that I have. But again, it does take some time and we're also really lucky too. Actually, in a weird way, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this conversation to the idea of letting people go. And I was actually just featured in Steve Cadigan had a TikTok, and he was a former HR person for LinkedIn when LinkedIn had their big growth. He's also a mentor of mine, and he was actually talking because I had an executive assistant. She's fantastic, but I was only able to keep her on half-time instead of full time. And so instead of it kind of being a strange thing where she had to sneak around and maybe find another job or anything, we just kept open communication through the entire thing. And I actually started recruiting for her, asking into my communities like, hey, do you have room for half-time for her? That sort of thing, because I want her to have a successful life. I still want her to be involved with me. Is there a way that we could set that up? Now she has another position. She's very happy in it. She's still connected with our business, and probably has one, is probably one of our strongest advocates. And we still find that a majority of the people who leave our organization, they still come back. They still drop us notes like, how's it going? Love what you're doing. And they've become advocates for us in their other worlds that they go into to build. And so, so I think in a weird way, letting people go, like if you're in a business and that things, you're just not able to employ the number that you need, that sort of thing. I don't know if they'd write this in the books, but I actually found just having that really open conversation and being like, I'm here with you. Let's walk through this together. Maybe a little bit extra of what I'm doing. It's not a layoff. It's not you're fired or anything like that. It's just, here's what I can see coming. I'd like to work with you to get us both to the position that we need to be. It's been the most powerful thing that I can do, actually. And so I weirdly have pride in the way that a majority of people have left the company.
No, thanks for sharing that. What else from that? You mentioned your mentor. What else have you learned from them?
Yeah. I've been actually very fortunate to have some incredible mentors in my life. Will Bunker, he was a founder of Match.com. He just lets, every time I call him, he just drops these pearls of knowledge. I'm just like, what? Thank you. Neil Dempsey he's the managing partner of Bay Partners, and he was actually one of the early investors in Starbucks and has since gone on to invest in many, many other companies, especially women-led companies. And so I'm very lucky that I get to communicate with him very regularly. I also have a lot of organizations too that we're a part of that really, really take us that much further. Right in our city, we have like Innovation Saskatchewan and Collider, which is a space. We have investment groups like Startup TNT and the Firehood. We've got all sorts of entrepreneurial groups from WESC, the Women Entrepreneurs entrepreneurs group to Boundless, which is out of Ontario, who've taken us on as, clients. And so we've been really lucky and, partners. We have the Diversity Institute out of Toronto, NACO, which is the National Angel Association here in the province in Canada. And honestly, I could go on. We literally work with about 100 different partnerships a year because, again, even from that level of just checking in, how are things going, sharing something in an event that they're doing, to the next level, we're actually doing projects together and making really big things happen.
No, thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned it earlier too about how important partnerships are. And some people may have the opposite approach to be like, well, I'm so busy, I don't have time. So talk about why it's so important to be involved in these groups.
It is time consuming to build relationships. There's no question. But I often find that right now I'm in the position where if I have a question for my business, I can usually think about 3 or 4 people that I can go to help elevate that. And so it's not necessarily that I need one specific person. I actually am working with an amazing coach right now. Her name's Claudia Folga. We're working on money mindset, and it has been an exceptional experience working with her. But it's also the idea that you can get guidance to do your work better. But again, it's sort of creating a small army, I guess, of other people who just, who are also doing referrals and just believe in what you're doing. And you don't know the kind of magic that'll come out of that. And like, we get a lot of strange, I have no idea where they've come from. I was just nominated for a Woman of the Year award for a Canadian technology group. And I have no idea how I got nominated. I don't know where it came from. Somebody somewhere saw my name and put it forward. And I really appreciate those types of things. And so those are kind of the advantages of it, where it really, having a strong group of people that you're working with just elevates everything that you do.
I'm the same as you, Katrina. People say, "Oh, what groups are you in?" And I start listing them. I'm like, "Whoa, I'm in like 7 or 9 groups. That's that's a lot of time." But I agree. It's like there's nothing that shortcuts things better than like a great relationship or a partnership, and someone that may have taken a ton of time, energy, and money can shortcut that for me, or I can shortcut that for them, hopefully too. Talk about the money mindset for a second, and what have you learned around that has helped you?
This has been such an interesting amount of work that I've been going through. And again, Claudia is incredible. She's built several, she's from the Valley area, and she's built from the HR perspective 4 different groups to, from 10 to hundreds of people. So she really has some really strong skills in scaling. And one of the big things that I've really taken away from it is we all have beliefs around money. It's just how it is. And a lot of it comes from, childhood experiences, from overall experiences. And I had a company go under that, that provides, some money trauma when you're going through those types of experiences. And so really taking the time to explore your mindset around it. What are some of your beliefs that maybe blocking you? So for example, for me, I have some questions about, am I worthy, right? Should I be making money, all that kind of stuff. And these are really personal questions. Everybody's going to have a different experience with it. But ultimately taking that time to actually explore. And we've actually been doing some inner child work, which is really interesting to me. I've done a lot of spiritual work, but never done a lot of inner child work. And so basically, if I'll give you the high level, just in case someone else can walk away and be like, oh, interesting, I want to try that. But essentially, if something goes on, like let's just say I get triggered about something, I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to hire or something like that, and I actually feel it in my heart. That minute that I feel it, I can do this exercise right then, or I can kind of table it and do it that night. I basically go back and ask my question, when was the first time you felt that way? And it's been interesting because I've even done presentations on, my experience as a woman entrepreneur and my money mindset. So I sort of have a money story that I can share, at the high levels of and all that kind of stuff. But all the things that have been coming up are very subtle. So I remember not being able to get the same jackets that all the other girls from my classes in grade 6 all had, which is such a small thing, not a thing I've
So
thought
I'm
about
scarring
in
my kids right
years.
now, is what you're saying, Katrina.
Just these small things that probably have no anything on
I have
other
no
people.
doubt I'm scarring them.
Yeah,
Yes.
just actually going back and like feeling it. And then what you do is very gently parent yourself and be like, hey, grade 6 Katrina, this sucks. Like that feels really, that doesn't feel close. You're not feeling connected to your community. You're feeling like an outsider already because you're at that age and all that kind of stuff. And really just being gentle with yourself. And I really found I didn't realize I was carrying all these mindset boulders and hauling them around. And then once I kind of, explore them, neutralize the feeling, make my inner child feel heard, it's been amazing actually how light I've been feeling. And it's a really excellent exercise. So there's a big shout out to my coach right now. She'll love that.
I love it.
Folga, yeah.
There's a TV show, I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it. It's called Being Erica. And it takes this person goes back to those times in their past, and either changes them or doesn't. So it's a super interesting show, but it reminds me of what you're saying.
Ooh, I might have to go check that out. I like that idea.
My wife and I binge watch that together. But last question, and Katrina, just thanks for sharing your journey, your story, your lessons, and I want to encourage everyone to check out ethicaldigital.ca to learn more. Last question is just more, I know you have a lot of groups, a lot of mentors that have helped you. Are there any other like books or resources that you'd recommend that you've looked at in your business career? Obviously, besides Action Tracking, which is your book, and people can check that out too. Any favorite business or leadership books for you?
I have literally have hundreds of books. If you can see the video, I'm behind me. I'm an avid reader. I really enjoy lifting myself. I use books like drugs, to be honest. When I need to calm down, I read some fiction. When I need to amp up, get some motivation, I get into business books and help me get there. I think one of my favorites that has had the most impact in the recent times has been Atomic Habits. And I know it's a very popular business book, but I implemented that. I have an app that I check every day of just the different habits I want to do. And I just want to say at the age of mid 40s, I am now a bed maker. I did not make my bed before. That's embarrassing to say, but I thought I was being extra efficient by not even dealing with it. But there's some of those small things, like just things that, who do I want to be? So I know this sounds hilarious, but I want to be an older woman with great arms. So I do 10 push-ups a day. No big deal. I know. But the idea with the Atomic Habits is not that you're going to do a big push where you're just going to have like a big push into making a change. It's that you make incremental changes in your daily life to reach a long-term goal. And so I've really found it effective just for, my physical health, my mental health, my relationships with people. Just a reminder, hey, send a text to your mom, things like that.
I love it. Thank you, Katrina, for sharing everything. Everyone, check out ethicaldigital.ca. Check out more episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Katrina, thanks so much.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.